Our next speaker for the day is going to be Dr. Tassos. With 40 plus years of experience in education and is currently working as a Quality Assurance School Improvement Officer at Riyadh School. Most recently, Dr. Tassos has achieved qualification in Cognitive Positive Psychology and is an advocate of mindfulness and well-being. Let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Tassos on board.
A very good afternoon to you all. My name is Dr. Anastasiades. I come with over 30 years of experience in leadership and leadership of schools, and it's been a very challenging few years. So today I'm going to present an opportunity for us to relook at assessment, relook at how students can continue to further their learning despite the pandemic, and a strategy that focuses on learning. Very much so, over the last few years, we've been talking about assessment, and assessment for learning, and assessment of learning. Now, it's my belief that one of the biggest priorities for us as educators and leaders in education is to develop a learner's resilience, and as educators, we need to nurture the values and develop their skills, develop learner skills, so they can work in modern workplaces through the pandemic, through hybrid situations, through our digital technology, through our uncertain environments. So we need to help them develop a paradigm of learning that they can use for assessment. And many of the transferable skills that we're talking about, I'm sure you've all heard about, but what we need to do now is, as educators, we need to focus these skills in the classroom so that we're developing transferable skills, which include communicating with each other, whether it be online, and communication can be unpacked into collaboration. For example, it's not just about the teacher talking to the student, it's the student talking to each other, thinking deeper. It's about the student asking questions. It's about challenging themselves. It's about true collaboration, whether it be online or in the classroom. It's about using these opportunities of collaboration to think critically, to think deeper, and to solve problems. Which means that the teacher is taking less of a front of the classroom role and empowering the students to develop the skills for solving their own problems, for finding their own solutions. Through this digital literacy, our students are much more equipped than ever before, and over the last 2 or 3 years, I'm sure we will all agree that digital literacy has been a priority for all of us through the pandemic, and the positives is that we've developed many forums for being able to communicate globally in the house or wherever it is in the world. And these are skills that will help us continue our project management, project development, and creativity in learning, so that we can be innovative, because things will change and they will continue to change. I mean, we've now got technology developing at such a rapid pace. We've got the metaverse now coming in. So it's a very interesting scenario for all our students and as educators to start to rethink paradigm for assessment. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that learning is maximized in an environment where it's effective. Whereas learners believe that they're capable of learning successfully, where they receive support and they receive feedback, and they're able to make decisions about their own learning, and critically they're able to monitor and reflect on the progress that they are making as a learner. Again, the traditional approach for learners is now beginning to be rethought, and I know many changes are happening both in Saudi Arabia and internationally, where the teacher is now becoming more of a facilitator. The curriculum is now becoming more adapted to the students' needs. The learners are being able to take more responsibility for their own progress, and through this much more effective learning environment, students are actually beginning to feel more motivated about their learning, and they're not just the passive learners focusing on textbooks, which are in many cases out of date by the time they are printed. So what's an effective learning environment? Well, I mean, where do we learn? We need to reflect us as teachers and learners, and you know, as global educators, we build connections from wherever we are. We come with different backgrounds. If we've worked in different countries, we've got different backgrounds and different experiences. We've got different start points. We've got different needs, and it's the same with learners. We have a group of learners in the classroom, and one of the most important things for an effective learning environment is for us as leaders and teachers to build connections with their backgrounds, to their start points, to their individual learning needs. It's very important that we also provide a balance of guidance and autonomy. Of course, this is critical, because after all, we're the experienced teachers and leaders with subject knowledge, but that doesn't mean that we can't provide the learners the opportunity for autonomy and guide them through research, taking perhaps the Socrates approach and asking them to find out for themselves and challenging their findings, and allowing them to build confidence in their ways of learning. After all, particularly now, coming through the pandemic, where many students have been learning through online forums, through discussion forums, through many different forums, they've probably developed the skills to be able to provide you as a teacher or a leader evidence of their learning. So in an effective learning environment, there's this encouragement of ongoing focus on understanding and applying knowledge rather than just performance. In other words, do they understand what they're learning? And how do we know they understand that they're learning it? And can they apply it into different situations? You know, we're having to every day now, right? We're having to apply our knowledge in many different uncertain terms. So are the students developing these skills, these resilience to be able to apply? And are we giving them the opportunity to do these, or are we still producing lectures and PowerPoint where engaged, are unmotivated, don't develop the self-belief, don't develop the confidence of self-regulated learners? These, I suggest, are some questions that educators need to start asking. So critically, one of the main messages of this presentation is the encouragement of motivation. And I mean by true motivation, because whether face-to-face, whether online, there's no doubt that once we are motivated, once we get some kind of control over our learning environment, once we become interested, once we become curious, once we have to begin to solve things for ourselves, find things for ourselves, we start to believe, we start to feel much more motivated. And there are so many ways now that we can use project-based learning to increase motivation, so that learners can really see the relevance of their learning. Why are they learning photosynthesis? Why are they learning geometry? Now, giving them the opportunity to apply those in real-life problems, aligning them with their real-life long-term aspirations. So in other words, you know, when you're sharing a learning objective with the students, what does it mean to them? Ask them to discuss the relevance of this, ask them to rephrase it, ask them to identify why it is important that they understand what the objective is. Ask them to understand what they're expecting of what you're expecting of them. Are you expecting them to solve a problem? Are you expecting them to memorize? Are you expecting them to think critically? Are you expecting them to prepare for a test? And you know, every lesson is a learning opportunity. So by the end of every lesson, there should be some kind of learning evidence, whether it be skill-based, knowledge-based, where the student is able to produce some kind of evidence of learning. Now, so let's go on to the concept of authentic assessment and authentic learning. Learning is authentic, I believe, if it's applied. If it's applied to real life situations. If you know what to do with your learning. So you're learning the times tables, you're learning the geometry, you're learning the biochemistry, you're learning the mathematics, but you're able to apply it. You're able to apply it to real life. So that begins to give us the opportunity to talk about what or assessment is and what authentic assessment is. And I'm not talking here about testing and recall or passing examination. I'm talking about an authentic assessment of the young learner's ability to use their knowledge. And this is an opportunity for them to apply what they've learned to real life situations and to be able to use it in collaborative group work, in discussion, in application, in critical thinking. This is where we begin to talk about authenticity. So the students are able to use creativity, they're able to be imaginative, they're able to use practical applications, they're able to discuss with you, ask the right questions. So in which every area of learning contributes to a young learner's broad education by developing the knowledge, understanding the knowledge, alongside the skills and applying that knowledge, as well as forming incredible learning attributes which are needed in our 21st century generation. And of course, feedback from the teacher should provide next steps, opportunities in learning, and assist learners to appreciate and monitor their own progress. Now, listening to this, of course, I'm going to get many questions of, yes, but we need to prepare for examinations. We need to cover the curriculum. We are so much under pressure to cover in the curriculum. Have we got time for all this? And throughout my many years of leadership experience, there is no doubt in my mind that when the curriculum is adapted and students are motivated to take more accountability for their own learning, whether it be that you prepare them for an IB examination, an AES examination, a CB examination, an AP examination, when they've got a much more thorough understanding of their learning and application, the examination skills are much easier to learn than actually being able to use and apply the knowledge. And of course, if we think of the curriculum like a train, this is our curriculum objectives. This is our curriculum as teachers. We are very anxious to make sure that we plan and effectively deliver our curriculum. But do we think about, are the students on board the train? You know, do we want the train to arrive at the destination with the students on board, or have they been left behind? And of course, when they are left behind and they've missed a part of the curriculum because they haven't understood it, the gap gets further and they get further and further behind. So the authenticity that I'm talking about of assessment is linked to understanding, application, and the question is, of course, how do we know? So, you know, successful learners learn because they're ready to learn. Their ability to use unfamiliar situations is very, very good. Because it's motivational, motivated learners learn. They learn and they produce evidence of learning. Because of course, when you're learning, you're producing evidence of learning, whether it be by discussion, whether it be by presentation, whether it be by critical thinking, you're learning, right? That's evidence of learning. The output, the outcome is evidence of learning. The question we need to ask ourselves as educators is, do we trust our students? Do we trust the authenticity of their learning? If a student produces learning in a format that we are not familiar with, do we trust it? Can we use it? This intrinsic motivation, if they're pursuing a topic of personal interest and responding to a challenge that they believe is within their capabilities. Of course, they've got this feeling of autonomy and control of the learning, and you're providing them support. You're allowing the more challenging learning. So in other words, the brighter learners, you're asking more questions, you're allowing them to apply learning to different situations, so different problems. You're enabling these learners to create even their own scenarios. Now this is real life, right? So we're preparing them for real life, because particularly post-pandemic, we're faced with scenarios all the time in having to be creative. And of course, human learning does not just involve learning discrete facts and skills. It's not just about memorizing. It's not just about chapter 1, 2, chapter 3. It's about this very intricate process of being motivated and applying our learning. And apologies for spending so much time on this, but this is really where the paradigm shift is. Are we ready as leaders to focus our learning classrooms on learner motivation? Are we ready to let go of our subject knowledge and pass it over to our students, allow them to prevent learning evidence and application? So looking at learning in detail, of course, your educators, many years of experience, and I know in this forum we've got educators going back many years. So we all know that learning is the process by which we are increasing interconnectivity, sophistication, knowledge, skills, and understanding. And we're developing an expertise which eventually we call mastery. We master some skills, and mastery can happen in many ways. Can happen by practicing, by using, but of course by applying and rating. Mastery becomes much more effective because you're challenging your thinking. You're beginning to understand the principles much deeper and the ways of working much deeper. So really learning is a process. And we question ourselves in terms of what is deep understanding. How do we know a student has learned? How do we know we've learned? Well, of course, deep understanding gives a learner the opportunity to apply and transfer what they've known, their knowledge, and give you evidence of it. So it's much more effective that it has a personal meaning. So for example, if you're giving out a learning objective or a few learning objectives to the class, and you have your learning outcomes, and you say by the end of the lesson we need to know the dark reaction of photosynthesis, and what does this mean? So we're sharing our background knowledge, and some students have got an understanding, and we agree by the end of the lesson some students will just try and learn and apply, learn the basic nomenclature of photosynthesis. Others will start applying it because they know the basic nomenclature, and they will say, well, I'm going to apply. Others will say, well, I'm going to look at what happens in countries where there's not a lot of light, or like Saudi Arabia, how we're going to make Saudi Arabia a green country. So immediately students have developed their own personal understanding and ways of application, and you're providing them with an opportunity by the end of the lesson to present something to you as a teacher that is evidence of their understanding and learning. Now you're using this authentic evidence to motivate them, inspire them by deep questioning so that they can deep their learning. And of course this evidence is continually accumulating, and we can accumulate these evidence now in Teams, in Seesaw, or in many different apps where the students continue to improve and collect their evidence that can build on. And of course, as soon as we've assessed this evidence, the fact that we're assessing or asking questions about it, or given a quiz or given an exam, that gives them an opportunity to improve their learning, because learning is continuous. The train doesn't stop. The train doesn't stop. It doesn't even stop when they finish their A-levels or IB exams. It just continues. We want this personal meaning to continue to our learners. So moving on from here, what I really want us as educators to think about is, in terms of deep understanding, what do we want from our learners? We want them to develop the knowledge, the skills, the understanding. We want them to be able to plan ahead and direct their learning, challenge, goals to be realistic. We want them to be able to able to control their learning, and we want them to be able to act on areas that they're not so good on and be able to feel confident to ask for support so that they can achieve much more at a greater depth. So the curriculum, I'm arguing, and I'm seeing in evidence, should have a greater emphasis on learning as a continuous individual process rather than a body of discrete facts. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, we've now finished, rather than we must create these learning objectives because they're on the syllabus and we are really under pressure to complete the curriculum. The curriculum can be adapted to learners' needs and of course to the tests, but let's not worry too much about the tests because my focus today is on learning. And it's particularly essential for teachers to understand the paradigm shift which might be needed to move from a teacher-centered, content-driven curriculum to a learner-centered, personalized approach. Are we as teachers, are we as educators, are we ready to let go of our knowledge? Are we ready to empower the learners to become more self-regulated? Are we ready for a learner-centered, personalized approach? So assessment processes, I believe, should provide you quality information about the points individuals have reached in their learning and the progress they're making towards the achievement of higher standards or next curriculum objectives or whatever you want them to achieve, whether it be an exam or not. So assessments should encourage young learners this sense of autonomy so that metacognitively they're able to set their own goals and monitor their own learning progress, including the ability to look at the long-term learning journey, what they're going to do and what they're going to do next. And one of the things that works really well in classrooms is the focus on every learner can make in the classroom through self and peer assessment, as well as teacher assessment, the teacher being an inspirer, students assessing themselves against their learning objectives, guiding the teacher guiding the learner to the next steps on their learning journey, whereas professional teacher learning could be focused on the base that learning is at the heart of everything. Understanding where learner is at their stage of learning is what learning is all about. So we're changing the focus from teaching to a learning paradigm. Coming near to the end now. So I'm, throughout my many years experience, worked in 10, now 11 different countries now in Saudi Arabia, helping Riyadh schools in their development. Curiosity, discovery, wonder, passion. I mean, think of it. Isn't that what drives us? Aren't these the prime motivators and features of learning? Is learning not just about now, but throughout school years and beyond? And I argue that if we have this emotional engagement and we promote these opportunities for learners and young learners to see improvements they are making in their learning and they're able to celebrate it with our constructive feedback, positive feedback, and how they can contribute to only their own progress, then the teaching mindset, which places the syllabus at the center of learning, content delivery, changes to the paradigm of learning where teachers have inclusive flexibility to decide what to teach, how to teach it, how much time to spend teaching it, based on the learner. And final few points as I come to the end of my speech. And learning is successful. If we take this away, I think this is very, very important. Learning is successful when learning goals are clear and achievable on relatively short timelines. So we need to understand lesson by lesson. We need to keep revisiting them with the students. The goals are an appropriate challenge for the learner, but they stretch and challenge individuals. The young learners are given regular feedback, positive reinforcement on what they need to do next. They're given support to plan and monitor their own learning progress. And of course, they're given autonomy so they can really work towards their own learning. I'm just going to finish up with a lovely poem which I really like. It's an ancient Taoist poem. I just want to read it out. It's go with the children, live among them, learn from them, love them, start with what they have, build on what they have, of the best teachers. When their task is accomplished, their work is done. The children will remark, we have done it all ourselves. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I very much enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this conference. Thank you. So thank you very much. I'll answer the questions online. As information technology has helped the education system to evolve faster, do you think it will have an impact on learning? How can schools make sure teachers are able to motivate their students? I think some very good questions here. I think through the learning paradigm, empowering students, the pandemic has created many, many more opportunities for us now, and has built student skills and resilience, and they're able to actually produce much greater emphasis on learning evidence. The main thing is our learners, do we give them time to become self-regulated learners? Are we ready? Are we ready to let go? Are we ready to let go? I'm not online anymore. I finished, right? Okay, so I think really this pandemic has given us a fantastic opportunity because we're now trusting our students to begin to create learning outcomes and produce really valid evidence of learning. And of course, if we're allowing them to peer assess and self-assess and be creative in the way they present this learning, then this has been a fantastic opportunity for all of us in the pandemic. And I think even after the pandemic, this digital opportunity will remain because students have now been online, many of them for 2 years, for 3 years, and have developed the skills to be able to produce evidence, whether it be PowerPoints, presentations, speaking, applying knowledge, creativity. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to reflect as learners, as leaders of learning, and take this as a real opportunity. We've now got different learners. We need to let go. We need to follow them. We need to allow them to self-assess. We need to allow them to peer assess, and we need to allow them to, go with the new learning paradigm and prove that they can do it against our learning objectives. That's the first question. The second question: are school teachers to motivate students considering the challenge? Well, look, again, if you can go through my the key points of my presentation, if we look at the learning paradigm rather than teaching paradigm, and we begin to trust our students in being able to use technology to find out, self-assess, peer assess, we begin to trust. We use perhaps a Socrates approach and ask them questions about why. What does this mean when you've learned it? We're now in COVID. How will this help you in the COVID scenario? We're still delivering our curriculum, but our teachers really need to just, again, very important, just change the paradigm from teaching to learning. We're still great teachers. No one is going to assess us by our subject knowledge. Our subject knowledge, many of us, we were taught in rows 30, 40 years ago. We're no longer in rows. We're in a digital society. We're able to trust our learners. If we find something, if we want to find something out, we usually find it ourselves by using technology and Google. So let's start looking at motivating students, empowering them, give them positive feedback, create them as self-regulated learners. Don't be so stressed up about completing the curriculum and preparation for tests. Focus on learning and motivation and self-confidence. Does this answer the questions? Do you require anything else? Any other questions, anyone?
So we had two questions, Mr. Tassos, and I think there are no more questions.
Yes, I answered them on live, right? I spoke about them.
Yes, thank you so much. Support team, can we go offline now?
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable inputs. It was a pleasure having you with us today.